All right, it's time to roll. Another big day of 49ers conversation. I used to think that this week before free agency was a time to reset, the time to chill, and then it hits like a tidal wave on Monday, but no, it's hit like a tidal wave every single day of this week. The latest discussion surrounds the power dynamic in the 49ers front office, and we've already known for a long time that the 49ers are changing the way that they do things this offseason. As evidence, I present to you this. This is John Lynch from the NFL Combine a week and a half ago. We've known about this move to ruthless efficiency. I've written a ton about it, not only in this piece, but in this piece. That's Lynch and Brandon Ayuk. There's a reason that Brandon Ayuk's on the trade block right now. There's a reason that Deebo Samuel has been traded. There's a reason that the 49ers are trying to, I think, emulate teams like the Buffalo Bills, the Los Angeles Rams, even the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. And that is because they went 6-11, and the ROI, return on investment for Jed York's spending, simply was not there in 2024. So they're trying to move to cost efficiency. But what we don't know is exactly how this cost efficiency is going to affect how the 49ers negotiate Brock Purdy's contract. I think before I delve into anything about power dynamics and who's going to be running the show this offseason, obviously you guys know that I'll be talking about John Lynch because I think that he has been the key figure in the 49ers building over the years. And I think this is even more of his moment this offseason because I think that he could really be the intermediary, the bridge between some competing interests in the 49ers building as they strive to build the best roster possible. Before I get into the nitty gritty, I think it's really important to look at this from 30,000 feet. The 49ers have given out the most big contracts of any NFL team since Lynch and Shanahan have taken over. So, some people are saying, I wish the 49ers didn't have a contract drama every single offseason. By saying that, you're essentially saying, I wish the 49ers didn't have good players or didn't have too many good players. When you have a lot of good players, there are a lot of mouths to feed, and you guys aren't the ones paying the checks. Jed York is paying the checks. He paid $334 million last year to field what the 49ers put out there, and it was a team that finished 6-11. So the realities of the situation are that at some point, some financial restraint does have to happen. At some point, there is going to be a push from the person writing the checks to say, hey, why don't we be a little smarter with our money? If it didn't turn into a Super Bowl, it turned into 6-11 last offseason. So this is not a matter of the 49ers being cheap. This is a matter of the 49ers recalibrating. And John Lynch made an excellent point. And I think this one is going to be the guiding principle of the 49ers offseason. And it's one that we have to remember as they're building this football team. He said last week that you can actually become a better football team with a more cost-efficient approach. And look, the Philadelphia Eagles just won the Super Bowl. They're the team that let Javon Hargrave and others go. And they decided to go with the cost-controlled replacement method. The Buffalo Bills let their top two receivers go after the 2023 season, and Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, they're right back in that championship game. In their own division, the Rams are doing it. So all of that, I think, needs to preface where we're headed now, talking about how the 49ers are going to be operating things around the contract for Brock Purdy. I will start with this, and then we're going to work backwards. The Purdy price, wherever it ends up, absolutely cannot end below Jared Goff's. Goff is in the low 50 millions. It's going to have to be higher than that. It's going to have to be, we've established this. It's going to have to be on this spectrum. There could be significant debate about where on the APY spectrum it is between number one and number two, because Dak Prescott did have unusual leverage over the Dallas Cowboys when he signed his contract just before the start of the 2024 season. No franchise tag, none of that was there for Dak Prescott. We understand, and the Cowboys were about to play football. in that season. They're opening the year against the Cleveland Browns on the road. They ended up blowing out the Browns. So Dak got his $60 million. That was a significant escalation over the high water mark before. Joe Burrow at $55 million. But the bottom line is that Goff is a little bit below all of these numbers. The NFL salary cap has increased 24% over the course of the past 2 seasons. And because of all that, the expectation is that the price just keeps on going up. And the 49ers, even as they tighten the belt across the entire roster this offseason, will not be able to escape the reality of the quarterback market. They may be able to drag it back down to earth a little bit through some extremely hard-nosed negotiating, but at some point you're going to have to ask how much is worth it for the 49ers, because QB is the absolute centerpiece of a football team. So my big question is how the 49ers play for cost efficiency is going to affect these Brock Purdy negotiations. And people have all kinds of ideas, but nobody has anything solid on that right now. There are rumors of a $45 million offer, but people who present those rumors don't really substantiate them. And on top of that, they don't acknowledge that all negotiations start at a lower point before they move up. We have the obvious direction that Brock Purdy is going to want to go with this, because that's just the way that the market has tugged at the quarterback position. We know that the 49ers have put the crunch on, right? I mean, you go back and look at Eric Armstead and the pay cut in 2024 before the 24 season. You look at Javon Hargrave, who's going to be a post June 1st cut. That's going to save $40 million. We know Deebo Samuel has been traded. That's cost controlling stuff for San Francisco. We know that Brandon Ayuk is on the trade block. He probably will stick around, but maybe he won't, depending on what the 49ers are offered. So we know that the 49ers have made and trended toward this belt tightening, this cost efficiency, and we know more of it's coming, and it's happening for obvious reasons. I think anybody with a brain, a pair of eyes and a brain, looking at the 49ers situation, looking at what happened in 2024, looking at what must happen moving forward, understands that. The question is, where does Brock Purdy's contract fall on the spectrum of the 49ers cutting costs? Do they play this as an ultimate hardball negotiation, no holds barred? Do they treat, every single one of these has taken a long time. That's one point of criticism, right, for the 49ers, is that every single one of these negotiations has drawn out. It's been a 15-round prize fight. We can go back to George Kittle in 2020, reading about that negotiation. They came in low, and they didn't get that signed until right before training camp. The quietest of these has been Fred Warner in 2021, which didn't have any public drama. And after it was signed, we didn't really hear about any crazy back and forth, but it did last until about a week before training camp, before Fred Warner signed his contract. There are obviously fireworks with Deebo Samuels in 2022. That was one where the 49ers and Samuel, for the first time, we saw the discomfort of a trade request thrown in there, right? We saw true unpleasantry in the public sphere. And I know that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, Lynch especially, wasn't all too happy about it, but that's how it went with Deebo Samuel in 2022. They finally were able to get something done about 2 or 3 days into training camp. So you could see here the pattern was these things are getting longer and longer. 2023, even longer. Nick Bosa, training camp holdout. Wasn't until a few days before the regular season that massive deal was struck. And Brandon Ayuk, well, wasn't until a few days before the regular season that the $30 million contract, $120 million total, $30 million per year, was struck. I think there was increasing damage as these deals went on as far as regular season performance went. So in the case of Deebo, you had a year that was categorically worse in 2022 than his 2021 season. And I think that he even might have publicly acknowledged that a lot of the stress and the focus on the contract hurt his performance in 2022. Bosa publicly acknowledged that the stress and the missing of training camp in 2023 hurt his performance. And we've talked so much over the past couple of days about Brandon Ayuk and how terrible he was coming off the contract in 2024. Now, the Ayuk one, you could criticize the 49ers for the timing and playing hardball for as long as they did with Nick Bosa, somebody who obviously was going to be at the top of the market based on the resume that he put up as Defensive Player of the Year. Deebo Samuel, too, I think it was a trickier negotiation just because of the odd position that he played at wide back and how unique that was, especially with Torrey Danby representing two other clients who were up for contracts that offseason with A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf, who's just requested a trade from the Seattle Seahawks. The Ayuk negotiation, all the data that we've gathered from that one points at Brandon Ayuk being at fault for that taking as long as it did. I mean, he's even come out and said as much. He said that he sat on a contract for 3 weeks. And I don't know if there was good faith negotiation from the start by Brandon Ayuk's camp. Ultimately, the deal was signed. We know the story. We've known the story for months, right? We know that the 49ers were very close to trading Brandon Ayuk because they were so fed up with him, with the immaturity behind the way that he handled it, and they just had to move forward into the season. And then Brandon Ayuk came into Kyle Shanahan's office. Shanahan's told this story a couple times. Shanahan called John Lynch saying, hey, don't trade this guy. Lynch didn't pick up. Shanahan had to run over to Lynch's office to make sure that a trade wasn't happening. They executed the deal, and obviously the rest has been history, but there's still a lot of history left to write in that situation. The good news for the 49ers is they did leave a potential out if they can trade Ayuk after this season. Anyway, those deals progressively hurt the play of the player in question more and more as time went on, right? I mean, I think the Ayuk one was the most damaging. He was bad for 7 games, and then he tore his ACL. Bosa's been good ever since the contract. I don't think he's played at his Defensive Player of the Year level, but he acknowledged that it hurt him. And we all know that Deebo Samuel is no longer with the 49ers. So at some point, you have to look at this from the 49ers perspective and say, if you're serious about fielding the best team possible in the coming season, something needs to get done ahead of a certain deadline. Like the deadline cannot be week 1. The deadline cannot be, oh boy, training camp is over. All time to practice and refine our skills is over. Week 1 is around the corner. Here come the New York Jets or whoever the 49ers are going to play in 2025. We better, get this done. And last year they finally put their foot down, like firmly with Ayuk, and were resolved to trade him on August 31st. And that's when Ayuk said, no, never mind. I'm going to sign a contract. The foot down moment for the 49ers and the moment to figure things out needs to be sooner. The issue is that they're now moving into a negotiation where the quarterback is at the centerpiece of it. And quarterback is the centerpiece of the football team. And if there's a time for the modification of the way that you do things, it probably is now, because you could build 99% of this team cost efficiently. You can do the very best bang for your buck job building the offensive line, the defensive line, linebackers, speed there, good defensive backs. 49ers just claimed Trey Tomlinson off waivers, by the way, small cornerback from the Rams. We'll talk about him in a bit. You can do everything to insulate the football team, but if you don't handle the central pillar, the quarterback position, which is very different than all the positions in both pay and responsibility, if you dawdle with this, if you try to play hardball here where you don't really have the leverage because the quarterback can just hold out, that can torpedo everything, like absolutely everything. The rest of the work that you do won't matter if you don't get the QB right. So that's why this is my main question. I know the 49ers are playing ruthless cost efficiency. That's nothing new to me. I know that the power might be shifting a little bit here as far as how the money is dispersed, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But until we know how that's going to affect the Brock Purdy contract, which I think almost certainly he's going to have to come in at a very, very valuable price because Purdy can just walk away from this. He can hold out, and the 49ers are completely screwed in this situation. Until we know how it's going to affect that, we don't know how this entire larger strategy from the 49ers is going to work. QB is absolutely the centerpiece. Now, at top of the show, said Brock Purdy's contract, John Lynch's job, and headline is, here's why it's John Lynch's time. The way that this is set up is, and this is the case anywhere, we talked about the owner signing the checks. Ownership is what funds things. $334 million from Jed York just last season. I mean, that's a lot of money, right? When York hired Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch in 2017, the one thing that I think has really helped the 49ers get to where they are, which is an enviable spot. They've got a lot of good players. They're facing the problem of having to pay guys every season, which is not a problem in and of itself because it's something that bad teams don't get to do, right? But the reason the 49ers were able to get to a point of success is that York stepped back and he allowed Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch to run the football team as they saw fit. He signed the checks, but nobody could expect that to last forever. Because unless you win a Super Bowl, unless you start delivering the way that the 49ers did under Eddie DeBartolo and Bill Walsh, and I know Eddie DeBartolo, who's Jed York's uncle, was willing to sign checks into oblivion. I mean, he was willing to spend forever up until he lost control of the team. Unless there is the ultimate return on investment for those checks, there's not going to be a blank check, right? And I think that the 49ers got really close in 2021, 19 as well. So and 20 was kind of a wash, right? Because of the COVID year. So they got really close in 2019. They got really close in 2020. They got really close in 2021. They got really close in 2022. They got really close in 2023. So all but 2020, they didn't get close. And 2020 was the wash year anyway. So there was a desperate attempt from the 49ers over the course of the 2024 offseason to give it one more push. We heard about the last dance. We heard about this major push of commitment into 2024 to see if the 49ers could possibly figure out a way to get over the hump and beat the Chiefs. But the problem is they were already playing from low ground. They're already playing from a big disadvantage because the team was exhausted after all those runs in years prior without the gratification, without the boost of winning a Super Bowl. Still, they went for it. So Jed York authorized a new contract for Trent Williams, a new contract for Christian McCaffrey, and a new contract ultimately for Brandon Ayuk. And then the ROI wasn't good. So finally, the 49ers hit the end of that road. Finally, they said, okay, wait, let's draw back here. Jed at the owners' meetings last offseason said that you could only do what the 49ers had been doing at the time for so long when it comes to building a football team. You ultimately have to go back through the draft. I'm going to get a good clip here from Jed York. This is from the owners' meetings in Orlando. This should have really apprised people to the notion that the clock was ticking. Listen to Jed.
You can't rely on filling your needs through free agency for an extended period of time. You always supplement through free agency, you supplement through trades, but you have to continue to build your team through the draft.
You always supplement through free agency, you supplement through trades, but you have to ultimately come back to building your team through the draft. He said that last year, that this was during the spending spree. So this year, the 49ers are going back to building the team through the draft, which has been great for the Rams, which has been, I think the Philadelphia Eagles won a Super Bowl because they did it. The 49ers had a good 2024 draft. If they can stack a 2025 draft on top of that, they're going to be in position to do that. But as far as spending goes, I think it's going to be different for the 49ers moving forward. And this is something that we've started to gather in 2024 when Eric Armstead refused to take the pay cut, when Kyle Juszczyk did decide to take a pay cut, when the 49ers said that's what they would need for him to stay on the roster. So they were already moving toward financial efficiency 2024 when they were spending a lot of money elsewhere. And now that's definitely going to be the push. Now the question is, where's that going to go with Brock Purdy? Parag Marathe is going to be the point man for the 49ers in the negotiation. So Marathe is Jed York's right-hand man when it comes to negotiating these contracts. Brock Purdy and his representation on the other side. And then you have Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch in an intermediary spot. And it's really fascinating to me because we've already heard both Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch talk about how valuable Purdy is, how they want to make sure that both of these guys have said they want to make sure that he is with the 49ers for the duration of their tenure. I think it is clear messaging from Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch that they want something done. The issue is that in the past, whatever Kyle Shanahan has wanted done seems to have happened, right? So he said, I want Brandon Ayuk. Well, let me run to John Lynch's office. Let me make sure that Brandon Ayuk isn't traded. It happened. I don't know how much control Kyle Shanahan had over some draft picks. I know Peter King's article back from 2017 suggested that he was the one behind drafting Joe Williams. I'm sure there's been other draft picks that Kyle Shanahan was more involved in than others, but it was Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch really operating the show as if they had a blank check behind them, and that might have been the case. I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case this offseason. And again, this is something that we've gathered here over the past, I want to say weeks, but also over the past 2 years. Things are going to have to be restrained. John Lynch talked about the cash spend needing to come down for the 49ers. So when it comes to Purdy, where will all the different big names at the top of the 49ers power structure lie? Obviously, Parag Marathe is going to want to get the best deal for the 49ers. But John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan need a quarterback, not only for the 49ers to win, but so they can keep their jobs. That's extremely important to them because quarterback is the centerpiece. Shanahan, I think if he had his way, he'd just want this to be over so he could focus on football. He doesn't want to deal with the money. So he'd be like, hey, give him $70 million a year if we have to. Let's go. I'm not paying the checks. It's obviously how Kyle Shanahan might think of this situation, given the fact that he's the coach, but that's not realistic. So that's where you could start to see how there might be dissenting opinions, how there might be some rough waters at the top of the 49ers power structure. And this goes back to the top of my piece. This is John Lynch's time. In the past, John Lynch had been an effective intermediary between Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers locker room and some players. And now I think that John Lynch is going to have to be a good intermediary between the top names in the 49ers power structure. Lynch has been a rudder for this organization. I don't think he gets enough credit for his work as general manager. He's been a true rudder over the years. He's somebody with a Hall of Fame player pedigree, then was in broadcasting, but he just has that stature about him that commands respect. We know that they call him Captain America, or at least Kyle Shanahan does around the team facility. But his positioning as a former player, I think, allows him to connect with the locker room. And Shanahan is obviously more connected with a locker room than he is with the executive level of the football team, because Shanahan's the coach. That's his job. But so I think that Lynch has this unique position where he's president of football operations. So obviously he's connected to the executive level, but he commands respect with the players and the coaching staff. So how John Lynch manages to make sure the 49ers boat stays steady here, even as they are cutting down on some of these costs, trying to be as efficient as possible in the midst of this Brock Purdy negotiation, how John Lynch sits in there and is able to emphasize the importance of taking care of the quarterback, while also making sure that the people on the contract side are satisfied so that the contract is actually offered at the level that Purdy wants. How he massages this situation, I think, is going to be extremely important. And Lynch has already been a leader that has helped stabilize a whole lot of other stuff behind the scenes. I can tell you guys that without getting into all too many specifics. But I think this is going to be his chance at a shining moment this offseason to make sure that the 49ers get through this transition. And they're not the first team to go through a transition like this. Let's be honest. In general, the NFL is structured as rookie quarterback, more expensive roster because you've got more money to spend on everybody else, versus quarterback on a bigger deal, roster needs to be a little bit more cost efficient. Moving from one to the other is a tricky prospect. We've seen teams try to do it, get stuck in purgatory. We've seen teams do it successfully. The team that did it successfully was the Philadelphia Eagles. They paid Jalen Hurts, and they were able to build the roster robustly around him. So they were able to walk the tightrope. A team that got stuck in purgatory, remember the Seattle Seahawks? Russell Wilson was on his rookie quarterback deal, and they had the Legion of Boom. And then they paid Russell Wilson, and the Legion of Boom broke up, and the defense just deteriorated over the years. They were never close to the elite level that they were in the early Wilson years, and the Seahawks turned into a middling team. It was the late stage Seahawks, we called them. Russell Wilson running around for his life, making some spectacular plays, but I mean, it was a shootout at best against good teams for the Seattle Seahawks in those years. And ultimately, Russell Wilson was gone. Ultimately, he was traded to Denver, and now Pete Carroll's gone from Seattle too. So that era came to a close. They did not handle the transition as gracefully as a team like the Philadelphia Eagles. We see the Los Angeles Rams right now. This is really interesting. Obviously, that's a team that's been through a lot already, through one round of salary cap hell. They've reemerged. But the way that they've reemerged while still rostering Matthew Stafford, delicately finding a way to keep him on the roster, is another good example of even-keeled, steady management. You got to give credit to Les Snead. You have to give credit to Sean McVay for making that happen. John Lynch is going to be the figure that has to guide the 49ers and potential competing interests into this next era. The transition that they're making is not groundbreaking. It's something to be expected. We've already known that this ruthless cost efficiency had to hit at some point. We heard what Jed York said. That was something that seemed to predict what we would see this offseason. And plus, he said that coming off of the Eric Armstead and Kyle Juszczyk situations where the 49ers saved a bunch of money. So this was coming down the pipeline regardless. It's how the 49ers handle the turnover that is going to determine how successful they are moving forward. And that, I really, really do think people aren't talking about this enough. I know my colleague Tim Kawakami has alluded to it. I think that he said it's John Lynch's time as well today. I think that is the key to watch in this situation. The 49ers have claimed a cornerback off of waivers. We're going to get back to the Purdy discussion here in a little bit more detail about the finances in a second, but I do have to get to the news. Trey Tomlinson claimed off waivers for the 49ers. This is a small corner. He's 5'8", 177, sixth-round pick out of TCU a couple years ago. But he is quick. And watched a little bit of tape. The guy won the Jim Thorpe Award at TCU, which goes to the best defensive back in all of college football. So to win that award, you're obviously doing something right. It was actually teammates with D. Winters there, the 49ers linebacker. The metrics for broad jump, vertical jump, 40, 10-yard split, all in the upper echelon of cornerbacks, which means that he could really move. I think the 49ers believe they see some dog in Trey Tomlinson. Let's be honest, to survive in this league at 5'8" and 177 pounds, there's got to be some dog in you. There's got to be some viciousness in you. 49ers have learned at the cornerback position that the guys they've brought in who have that viciousness have succeeded. Richard Sherman, I think, is at the top of the list. He obviously was a veteran. He was already established at that point anyway. But Deommodore Lenoir, Samuel Womack had a little bit of that too. He's now succeeding with the Colts. DJ Reed, Renardo Green. These guys all have like that nastiness, right? That you want in that can overcome size. I don't know if it's going to overcome 5'8", 177-pound size, but I think the 49ers have seen a pattern. The guys who have been softer have not necessarily worked out for the 49ers. Akello Witherspoon, Ambry Thomas. So I think in Trey Tomlinson, the 49ers see a cornerback with some dog in him. And as of right now, I have him making the 53-man roster. Now, that isn't saying a whole lot at this very moment because the 49ers have a lot of players they need to add to the cornerback room. The only projections I had before this Trey Tomlinson signing were Lenore, Green, and Darrell Luter Jr. And Luter has yet to play a lot of cornerback for the 49ers. So there's a lot of open spots. We'll see what they do in free agency. But for now, I'm going to give Trey Tomlinson the nod. Chase Lucas is also on the football team. One thing that I do have to say is that Trey Tomlinson played 44 snaps last year on defense at outside cornerback. He wasn't playing in the slot. He was playing at outside cornerback for the Rams. By virtue of this move, the 49ers have 2 years of team control in this situation. Tomlinson is only halfway through his rookie deal. So we talk about cost efficiency. If a player like this hits, that could be very cost efficient for the San Francisco 49ers. Moving back to this, talking about Lynch, Brock Purdy's contract, cost efficiency. We can also talk a little bit about Joey Bosa and Trey Hendrickson. That was a point of discussion a little bit earlier today and yesterday. This goes back to Bosa being released a couple nights ago by the Chargers. Hendrickson, edge rusher, has been granted his ability to seek a trade. Every time that a big name comes up, people are wondering if the 49ers are going to be involved. Well, I think through the first 31 minutes of this video, you get a little bit of an indication of where San Francisco is right now as far as financial commitments of massive calibers. It's going to have to be for a player like Brock Purdy, a young player on the upswing that can impact you in an A-list status. I'll talk about Hendrickson in a little bit. This is, oh, cool. Malik Mustafa. This is coming, I guess, from Malik's conversation with an agent. I'm going to have to show this to you guys. This is cool. Let me get this up on the screen. Mike is sending me good stuff, and I shall play it. Screenshot that was posted online. Cool stuff. Take a look at this. He's a dog. Who's that? Who's the conversation with? Mike. Yeah, this is what. So I guess he's talking to his agent. Either way, he likes Trey Tomlinson, even though that size is not great. So it looks like the 49ers have a player who delivers with a lot of desire on the football field. And that typically has worked really well in the 49ers cornerback room. That's been the type that has succeeded in San Francisco's system. That's from Universal Sports, which is Malik Mustafa's agency. So the hype right now surrounds. I'm going to have a video to play for you guys here in a little bit on Joey Bosa and Trey Hendrickson, because I have to go. We got a bunch of people coming over for dinner in a little bit. I've got to light the grill because we're grilling pizza tonight. So we got to get the egg going. Perfect that I recorded a 4-minute video on Joey Bosa and Trey Hendrickson and the 49ers' potential pursuit there, because it gives me a chance to go light the grill. So get your questions regarding Lynch and Brock Purdy ready. Why don't we talk about some other potential 49ers expenditures right now? So the hype right now surrounds Joey Bosa and Trey Hendrickson. For obvious reasons, Joey Bosa has been released by the Chargers, so he can sign with teams like the 49ers right now. He's officially a free agent. And Trey Hendrickson and his camp can look for a trade. The Cincinnati Bengals have authorized that. Hendrickson and Bosa both at different parts of their careers, although Hendrickson is actually older than Joey Bosa. Hendrickson is 30. Heading into 31, Joey Bosa is only 29. Hendrickson, though, led the league in sacks, not just this past season, but over the past 2 seasons. So when you talk about the price for Trey Hendrickson, it's going to be astronomical. It's going to take a lot of draft capital to get him, and the fact that he's been in his prime over the past 2 seasons means that he's probably going to ask for something north of $30 million per year. Max Crosby just set the market ahead of Nick Bosa's number at $35.5 million per year. Nick is at 34, and Trey is older, but I think he'll still command over 30. So if you're talking about cost efficiency as the 49ers, that may not be the place to look. However, Joey Bosa, yes, cost efficiency is possible there. Couple reasons. A, the family connection is obvious. But B, Joey Bosa has missed 23 games over the past 3 years, and you could look at that in one way, stay away from the guy with a 10-foot pole, or you could look at it in the way of opportunity. Joey Bosa has been one of the top players in this league ever since 2016, the last remaining San Diego Charger up until he was cut by the Chargers. But Defensive Rookie of the Year, multiple-time Pro Bowler. And one thing that should really intrigue the 49ers about Joey Bosa is his ability to play the run. They were number 29 against the run last year. He can set an edge along with the best of them. He is a true football player. And if you're looking for value, as the 49ers have said that they're looking for value this offseason, I think it's a fair bet that Joey Bosa might still have one upswing in him. He missed the vast majority of the 2022 and 2023 seasons with an injury, but he actually only missed 3 games in 2024. Now, the performance, I don't think, was where Joey was used to it being. But, again, he's younger than Trey Hendrickson. At age 29, there might still be one last hurrah left for Joey Bosa. Now, other teams might also sense that. That might drive the price up. Maybe the 49ers will have to rely on a family discount. But when we talk about edge rushers and we talk about value, the two guys who, one of them definitely is available and one of them may be available, well, we could say that Joey Bosa might present better value than Trey Hendrickson. But don't sleep on Khalil Mack, Joey's ex-teammate now from the Chargers. He's likely to not re-sign with the Chargers. 49ers on Monday will be able to talk to Khalil Mack if they so wish. That might also be a value play. Now, Khalil has still been near the top of the league grade rankings. He just did turn 34 years old, though. So add a couple more years, even on top of where Trey Hendrickson's at, and you could potentially have a desire to go ring chasing, which could lower a price, and you could also have the naturally lowered price by the age of Khalil Mack. Maybe both Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa can just head up the Pacific Coast and play for the 49ers. These are all opportunities that I expect San Francisco to explore. We'll see if one hits the right price, and potentially Myles Garrett can be thrown into that mix, but the Browns would have to want to trade him first. No matter how many times Deommodore Lenoir tries to call out to Myles Garrett on social media. My prediction is that Myles Garrett will become available at some point this calendar year, but maybe not until before the trade deadline hits. Beautiful sunset in Tennessee. There's your 49ers edge rusher update. We'll talk to you soon. And we'll talk to you right now. Cool. I got the grill lit. We're all set. I should probably open the window to have a look at it there. It's going to take a while to warm up, and then we're going to get the pizzas on it. Went to the Italian market, got the fresh dough. Everything is going to be good. Now we just have to finish talking about Brock Purdy, his contract, and how the 49ers are building this team. First, though, this show is brought to you by Public Rec. Public Rec has the Game Changer pants. They come in many different colors, from navy, dark olive, and stone gray. Make sure that you find the right color for you. It's comfort for every occasion. Comfortable enough for the couch, sharp enough for the city. For a limited time, you can get 20% off at Public Rec by using the code Lombardi at checkout. Just head to publicrec.com, use the code Lombardi, and you're all set. Oh, and when they ask you how you found them, be sure to mention our show. It really helps us out. Upgrade to Public Rec and feel the difference. All right, let's talk here. One thing that I wanted to mention a little bit earlier, the 49ers were trying to throw money at fires on the roster, put it that way, right? They were like, oh boy, Trent Williams wants a little bit more money. Sketchy on the offensive line. We've got to pay it. There were some expenditures on defense, obviously. They made some B-list signings along the defensive line. Devondre Campbell would be a great example of a Band-Aid signing that the 49ers were making just to take care of issues in their rush to try to get over the hump and win a Super Bowl. But ultimately, the results speak for themselves. And the defense of the 49ers plummeted down to number 26 in overall efficiency, number 29 against the run. That shows you that the football team hit a point of very diminishing returns given the money that was being spent on it this past season. There are a couple markers of a team that show, oh, okay, these guys, they need an infusion of hungry youth, of speed. One of the ultimate markers, and this has been true throughout the history of the sport, is run defense. If your team is near the bottom of the league in run defense, the roster is either too old, the roster is either too old, not hungry enough, not fast enough, not strong enough. It's just not good enough, period. Right? Run defense is football at its very core. And the 49ers dropped to number 29 this past season. This was like an eroding thing. The run defense was number 1 over the back half of 2021, number 2 in 2022. And then they dropped to number 26 in 2023, and it gets even worse, number 29 in 2024. So I think the 49ers had enough data. The roster was the oldest in the league, not surprisingly, given all the transactions that we saw. They had enough data to say, we're about to pay Brock Purdy. He's the centerpiece at quarterback, but the rest of this team around him is not performing in an efficient way. And that's no way to live in the NFL. There's no quarterback ever has been good with an aging roster that is not playing A-list football at any position. And I would venture to say that the 49ers were not playing A-list football hardly anywhere in 2024. So the run defense was just a bellwether. You saw a team that needed to get faster and younger around Brock Purdy. That's what the 49ers are doing. It seems that every single move this offseason has come with this guy as, not this guy. We got to get Purdy up on the stage. Where is he? It's not letting me put my own article. That's kind of funny, though. Up on stage. Now it's just dark. So we'll go back to me. I didn't mean to say that I'm the centerpiece of the 49ers, although that's what our little technical malfunction seemed to suggest. I wanted to put the Brock Purdy contract article up on the screen, but everything is working around Purdy now. And the 49ers and John Lynch, because I think that he is the stabilizer in that front office, need to make sure that the contract negotiations work well around Purdy too. Because if we just talk about this from a practical point of view, the 49ers would be in huge trouble if Brock Purdy decided to hold out. I mean, just think this through to its logical conclusion. If they can't find a good price, and if Brock Purdy doesn't agree to it, and that price, I think almost certainly it's going to have to be in the upper 50s for the 49ers. And we can talk more about Dak Prescott and cap inflation and all those small details, which are going to end up looming very large and be worth tens of millions of dollars in this case. But the bottom line is, if the 49ers don't take this seriously, if this is not treated as an appropriate modification of procedure from these other contracts that have lasted way too long, then Brock Purdy might not be at OTAs. He might not be at training camp. And then the whole 2025 season can go down the toilet. So there's a lot at stake here. And it's up to John Lynch to be the stabilizing figure for the 49ers as they traverse what I think is going to be a potentially treacherous path. I think that a lot of the moves that they've made already to clear space, though, can very easily be moves that have cleared space for Brock Purdy moving into the future. We can't discount the fact that San Francisco's got tens and tens of millions. It's going to maybe even catapult into the hundreds of millions of more room over the next few years. so that they can make their ownership comfortable with the cash spend it's going to require to make sure that the quarterback is in the building, ready to work heading into the 2025 season. I'm reading through some of the comments right now. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and drop them in. Somebody said that Kyle Shanahan did not lose a Super Bowl to Joe Flacco. That's actually Invader 49er. That's funny. Oh, the ghosts of 2012. Geno Smith. Geno Smith had been on a $30 million a year contract. We'll see where Geno Smith moves to. But Geno Smith has been a middle-of-the-pack quarterback, right? The QBR has been right in, I think, number 15, number 16. What we need to pay attention to is where does Sam Darnold end up? If some team breaks the bank for Sam Darnold in free agency, well, that's the end of this discussion here for Brock Purdy and the 49ers. He's going to be at I'm talking 50 plus million for Sam Darnold. I don't know if that's going to happen, but as somebody who Darnold was middle of the pack QBR, flamed out in the playoffs. Brock Purdy's the opposite of that. He's been top QBR, number 1 in 23, number 7 at his low point in 2024, and he hadn't flamed out in the playoffs. So if there are quarterbacks that are magnitudes worse than Brock Purdy in terms of resume who are on top of the QB list. Here's a look. Jordan Love is nowhere near as accomplished as Brock Purdy. Trevor Lawrence is nowhere near as accomplished as Brock Purdy. Tua Tagovailoa is nowhere near as accomplished as Brock Purdy. The top guy on this list, Dak Prescott, is nowhere near as accomplished as Brock Purdy. The only one that holds a candle to what Purdy has done is Joe Burrow. So this all speaks for itself. And if you need another comp this offseason, Sam Darnold might give it to you. And he's been nowhere near as successful as Brock Purdy. So the numbers all point to one place. I wrote the big contract projection for Brock Purdy. This is almost 2 months ago. But the 49ers stance here and the 49ers push to move to greater cost efficiency over the course of this offseason might point to another place. I think for the sake of the 49ers, though, they need to make sure that they put the quarterback in a different bucket as these other negotiations. If there ever were a time for a modification, this is it. This is the time for the modification. The 49ers need to get this done so Brock Purdy's in OTAs, so Brock Purdy is at training camp, and so they can move forward, turning the page to a team that is centered around its quarterback financially, because that's the only course of action that really makes any sense for the 49ers moving forward. All right, we've gone 48 minutes. Should we make it to 49? It means one question. One question, and then we're out of here. Could Purdy get a baseball contract like Mahomes? What does that mean? You mean like a really long contract? I've always thought that a long deal is good for a football team. In baseball, it's different because it's all fully guaranteed up through year 15. In football, even if you give a guy a long deal, there's typically only 3 years of guarantees at most. So the player's hurting himself sometimes when he signs a really long contract like that because team has contractual control, player does not have guaranteed money. But yes, a long contract is possible. Mahomes did that. I was surprised that Mahomes did that, but maybe he's happy in Kansas City. So to each his own. We'll see how this all ends up working out. All right, much more coming soon. Hopefully I illustrated those contract or those front office dynamics when it comes to the contract, when it comes to the spending. Lynch needs to be the linchpin for the 49ers in the middle of all of this for San Francisco. He has been that over the years. He's got another opportunity to be in that position for the 49ers moving forward. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon.